Hey guys, welcome to Bethel Online. My name is Jason. I'm one of the pastors here, and we're so glad you decided to make us a part of your weekend. No matter who you are, where you come from, we're so glad you're here. Our vision is to be a safe place for real people to encounter the real Jesus and experience real change. Our hope and our prayer is that no matter who you are or what you've been through, you know that you are loved and you are wanted here. We would love to get to know you better and help you connect with all that's going on. You can do this by going to our website at www.bethel.us or by downloading the Bethel app. You can find our app by searching Bethel Putco in your app store. Both online and in the app, you can fill out digital connection card. It only takes a minute and it'll help us know how to serve you better. Another way you can connect today is through giving. Your generosity at Bethel directly impacts God's mission to radically change people's lives in Putnam County and beyond. Through the ministries of Bethel and the many local and regional organizations we support, people are able to see the grace of God and how much He loves them. You can always give on our website at bethel.us/give or in the Bethel app. Thank you for partnering with us and making a difference. Well, thanks again for tuning in online today. Know that you are wanted and welcome here, and you are loved. I hope you all have a great day.
Have you ever gone on a vacation? I don't mean like a one-day trip somewhere. I'm talking about like a 7 or 8 day trip where, you know, you're already spending some money on a hotel, you're already spending some money on some tickets, and you start to think about the meals you're going to have to pay for and the groceries you're going to have to buy, and you're like, man, we've got to make sure we take everything we need on this vacation because I don't want to have to go to the store on vacation. I don't want to have to go and do shopping. So let's get our bags together. Now, I have to tell you, in my house, my wife is detail-oriented. Like, she has spreadsheets when it comes to going on vacation. Her ability to order things, organize things, and get things down to a process is incredible. But when we travel, my wife does not like the feeling that she might possibly forget a single thing that we're going to need. So on some of our trips, we'll literally follow her checklists. You know, 7 pairs of underwear, 7 t-shirts, 7 pairs of shorts, a sweatshirt in case it gets cold. I mean, Laura's got this to a science. And I just know that it will go better for her, it will go better for me, it will go better for our children if we check the boxes and do what we're supposed to. But there's one trip every year that I go on. And it's usually a trip about this time of year when I'm just a little bit overwhelmed with responsibilities and things to remember and things to do. And I like to travel light on that trip. I feel like for a week, I'm only going to have to be responsible and worry about myself. I'm going to spend a week spending time praying, spending time resting, and by all means, spend time on the beach. And if I have to go get something, it's not a big deal. I'd rather worry about it while I'm there in the mindset of the beach than to travel with a heavy bag. But last year, I chose to fly on a different airline because the tickets looked cheaper, but I didn't pay attention to the details. And the details said that rather than the typical 50 pounds per bag, I was only allowed 40. The problem is I got to the airport, I dropped off my bag, and it was fully loaded with my stuff for a week. You know, my sleep machine, the good old Darth Vader at night mask and all that. I had all of that lined out. And as I got to the gate and I dropped off my bag, everything seemed fine. I went all the way to Florida. And while I was in Florida, I've learned that when you go on these trips by yourself, you can't come back with empty hands when it comes to the people you left behind. So I like to pick up a shirt or some shells or some things for my little girl and make sure everybody's got a little something to know I remembered them and I thought of them on the trip. But on this last trip, I didn't realize that they didn't check my bag and the weight on the way in. And then I got there on the way back and my bag was like 51 pounds and it could only be 40. And so I'm rushing to get in the airport early hours of the morning. And the guy weighs the bag and he's like, it's going to be another $125 if you don't get it below 40 pounds. And He said, I could have gone with like 43 and given you some leeway, but because now I know it has to be below 40. And so I began to look down, and there was like a skillet that I had taken so I could cook my eggs in every morning. I know, taking a skillet on vacation seems silly, but I was trying to keep it real, and I liked the skillet. And so I thought, I'll take the skillet and cook my eggs in. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to pitch the skillet. I'm going to pitch this. I couldn't get rid of the presents I'd bought the kids. I was throwing away like cups that I'd bought, tumblers that maybe I was going to carry with me. And all of a sudden, I'm like forced with decisions about what to carry and what to leave behind. I had no choice but to lose the weight. Many times in our lives, we carry unnecessary weight. This series, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the things that we can leave behind so we can travel light. I'm going to talk about materialism. I'm going to talk a little bit about worry and insecurity and envy and how we leave those things behind so we can travel light and lose the weight. In Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1, the writer says this, therefore, since we're surrounded by such a huge crowd of witnesses to the life of faith, let us strip off every weight that slows us down, especially the sin that so easily trips us up. And let us run with the endurance the race God has set before us. If you're going to run a race, you want to travel light. What you pack along with you weighs you down. The writer is implying here that we're being watched by great followers of Jesus, that there's a crowd of witnesses watching the life that we're living, those who have gone before us and been faithful to the purposes of God. And he's saying, let us strip off every weight that slows us down. I mean, if you watched a marathon and someone wore a coat and heavy pants, you would be like, what an idiot. And yet, much like me at the airport that day, one guy on a 1-week trip, some of us carry around a bag that's far too heavy for what we actually need. Most of us know we get back off that trip, and oftentimes there are a couple or 3 outfits we didn't use because, we were being a beach bum and we didn't really need all of those clothes, and we never needed the sweatshirt and we never needed the jeans. We lived our week in a set of slides and some shorts and a polo shirt. I mean, we know inherently that we don't need everything we pack with us. But as followers of Christ, we often pack our bags way too heavy. And we have such a great purpose. And then when we do that, it can become overwhelming. I remember that morning as I got to the airport and I was like, I'm right on time. Things are going smooth. All I got to do is go to security. I'll drop off my bag kind of quick. And as I stood there, the line behind me began to build as I'm literally opening up my luggage all out on the middle of the floor in a train wreck, trying to decide I can't get rid of my little girl's present because she's really counting on the fact that I told her I picked up some shells for her, and I can't leave behind the gifts for others, and I've got to leave something behind here in order to make sure that the most important things get home. It was overwhelming. I don't do well in those kind of moments under pressure with a lot of people around, and I began to be really irritated and frustrated. And by the time I got home, the 7 days before were entirely overridden by the frustration I had experienced at the airport. Life can become overwhelming when we're packing along stuff we don't need to pack along. Worry can weigh us down. Now, I don't think it's a sin to be concerned. I don't think it's a sin to look ahead and say, I got a little concern about this thing coming up. I'm going to have to weigh my bag here in a little bit. I don't think it's a bad thing, because had I paid attention to the instructions on my ticket, I would have realized my bag was 40 instead of 50 pounds and that I needed to do some things ahead. It would have been smart to be concerned. But so often in time, we worry rather than have concern. Concern motivates us to act. Worry absolutely overwhelms us. This morning in the news, there was this article that the president had ordered people out of Americans out of Russia. Like that the president had warned that maybe some people should get out of the embassy in Russia. I don't know what bigger issues are happening within Russia other than the Russia-Ukraine conflict. But as I cooked my morning breakfast and flipped my eggs in my whole new skillet and went through that process, I began to think about the potential of a conflict, or what was it possibly going on that we instructed the embassy to remove people, Americans, from Russia. And all of a sudden I'm thinking about things like war and the potential of war. And man, I'm a dad of 3 kids, and I don't ever really want that to be a part of life. And the next thing you know, I'm overwhelmed by the potential of the world in front of me. Life can become overwhelming to us when we worry. And let's be honest, none of us want to wake up with a bunch of worry. No one wants to wake up with a bunch of anxieties about the things of life, but sometimes it happens. How do we let go of worry? If concern is appropriate, worry can often become sinful. I don't think it's wrong to look out to the future and wrestle with what could be coming. I think it's actually responsible. It's good stewardship of our lives. But to live in a constant state of worry is often a lack of trusting in the character of God. What's your top worry right now? What's the thing that's consuming your thoughts? Worry can be described or defined, and this morning I kind of went through and just tried to figure out what is the difference between concern and worry. Worry is mental distress or agitation, resulting from concern, usually from something that's impending or anticipated. 80% of the things that we worry about never happen. At least that's what the quote has been for years for every speaker who ever talks about worry. I don't know what the real numbers and the real statistics are, but I do believe that there's a God in heaven who's in control over all things, who is good and loves me and doesn't desire that I spend my time fretting over things that I have no need to worry about. Maybe there's some concern and some things I need to do because of concern. But to be mentally distressed or agitated, parents, do you want your children to be mentally distressed or agitated when they look at their future? Neither does a good God want his people to live in mental distress or agitation. So how do we come around to not being dominated by worry? You weren't actually designed to worry. In the beginning of time, in the garden, God literally instructs Adam and Eve that they're to be stewards of what they have, that they're responsible for what is in their hands, that what they have the ability to change, they should, but that he's made all of these things and put in their hands to be good stewards. In Matthew chapter 6, verse 27, it asks us this question: can all your worries add a single moment to your life? Can it improve your life to hang on to that worry you have? Maybe this morning you have legitimate concern. You see a character issue in one of your children. You see an incoming bill after a cold month, and you need to figure out some solutions for this. And I think it's okay to be concerned. Concern will call us to action, appropriate action. But when it comes to being mentally distressed over it, God desires to take care of our needs. Now, this isn't a sermon that tells us to just be lazy and not do anything about things we can help, but it's more about the things we can't control. Max Lucado says this: worry has never brightened a day, solved a problem, or cured a disease. You see, worry is destructive. If you look in all sorts of medical journals, the evidence is in, the proof is in the pudding. Worry is destructive. It's destructive to your mental peace, and your mental peace is destructive to your physical body. The one you're called to be a steward of. You're not responsible for maybe everyone's physical well-being and everyone's mental being, but you're called to take good care of the one you have and use it for the best of your ability to glorify God. Worry can be incredibly destructive. So how do we let it go? Point one, we live one day at a time. It doesn't mean we don't work toward the future, but we do what we can while we can without stressing over what's coming. Matthew chapter 6, verse 34 says it this way: do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will bring its own worries. Today's trouble is enough for today. Lucius Seneca said this: we worry more in imagination than in reality. Much of what we worry about never comes to reality. In order to be healthy, we've got to live one day at a time. Sir William Oslo said this: our plain duty is not to see what lies dimly at a distance, but what clearly lies at hand. This experience of Oslo was documented in several books historically talking about worry. And it came out of a time in which he was in the middle of a ship. He was with the captain of the ship, and all of a sudden the captain started flipping switches and he could hear noise everywhere. And there were great distractions and noise happening everywhere, alarms going off. And he began to ask the ship's captain, what is going on? And the ship's captain said this. He said, all of the noise you hear are the gates closing in the flood-proof cavity of the ship, so that if we incur a leak in one part of the ship, it doesn't leak into every part of the ship. We can only deal with the health of each part of the ship one at a time. And so there were pumps in every bottom portion of the ship that would empty it out. And if one ship, part of the ship, began to have a leak, it didn't leak into the other parts of the ship. The ship could handle floating with one leaky quarter of the ship, but it couldn't if water was allowed to get in all parts of the ship. Same is true when it comes to our life. We need to live our life in day-tight compartments. Deal today with the problems of today. Let tomorrow deal with itself. How do we let it go? We live in day-tight compartments and we trust in God. Now, I have to tell you, when I'm stressed, when I'm worried, when I'm anxious, and people tell me to trust in God, it can be overwhelming to me. Because most of us are trying. William Barclay said worry is essentially distrusting God. I'm trying to trust God, but I'm struggling to trust God. Why is that? He went on to say there may be greater sins than worry, but certainly there's no more disabling sin. You see, worrying keeps us from dealing with what's at our elbows. Worry keeps us dealing at what's on the horizon rather than what's in front of us. And the horizon can change as we deal with what's at our hands and our elbows. I don't know that it's necessarily a sin to wrestle with worry. But I think it's an alarm to us about our perception of who God is. Philippians 4:6 says this: don't worry about anything. Instead, pray about everything. Tell God what you need and thank Him for all He has done. Maybe worry and prayer can actually be the same thing, just differentiated. Prayer is putting your worry in the hands of God. Holding on to your worry without passing it over and trusting God is sin. Don't worry about anything. Instead, pray about everything. Tell God what you need and thank Him for all He has done. See, worry can disable us. He says, then you'll experience peace. Peace is the opposite of mental distress. You can have peace in easy situations and peace in the middle of chaos. You can hit an iceberg and have peace. if you're doing what you can to live life in a day-tight compartment, one day at a time. He says, then you'll experience the peace of God, which exceeds anything we can understand. His peace will guard your hearts and minds as you live in Christ Jesus. I want to ask you a question this morning. The thing you're worried about, how is your view of God being distorted? If God is a good God, if God cares about you, if you don't have to worry, but you are, what does it say about what you believe about God? And listen, if you're watching this morning and you fight with anxiety and you fight with stress, I get it. I've spent my life in a battle for mental peace. Sometimes there are deeper reasons why we struggle to trust God. We've begun to question why a good God would let a bad thing happen. We've begun to question whether or not a good God would allow us to walk through something difficult. But you see, God has this plan. And His plan is good for you, and His plan is good for me. Ultimately, He loves His children, and He has good plans for us. He's our refuge and our strength, as Psalms 46 verses 1 and 2 says. He's our refuge and our strength, always ready to help in times of trouble, so we will not fear. You see, when we see God accurately, trust comes easily. God is a good God. So you're in the middle of a breakup. So you're in the middle of an offense someone has done to you. So you're in the middle of a job shakeup. So you've got a child that's wayward, or you're facing an illness. God is good. God has no problem living up to His character. Historically, He's shown it. Visibly, He's proven it. He's good. When it comes to you, God has a good purpose. In Isaiah 26 verse 3, the prophet says this, you'll keep in perfect peace those who trust in you, whose thoughts are fixed on you. So my friend, will you let go of your worry today? It's a weight that's way too heavy for you to carry. I love you, Bethel. Have a great week.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Are you ready to take your next step? We would love to hear from you. You can send an email to hello@bethel.us. You can send us a message on Facebook, or you can let us know in the Bethel app. And speaking of the Bethel app, take a moment, if you haven't already, to go to your app store and search Bethel Putco to download our app. There's all kinds of great resources in the app. You can listen to messages, you can view the messages from Sunday morning, and you can also fill out a digital Connect card. You can do that today and each week to let us know that you're tuning in. You can also find some great information about our Bethel Kids Ministry and our Be the One student ministries. Also in the app, you can give. It's one of 3 ways you can give, with online giving at bethel.us/give, in our app, Bethel Putco, or through text. Hey, thanks again for joining us. We hope you have a great day and know that you are loved.